Have you ever looked at something so ordinary, like a cup of coffee, and suddenly realized it held the answer to a question you hadn't dared ask for years? Not because of how it looked, but because of how it smelled. Because deep down, your body remembers what your heart kept forgiving. That was the moment I stopped pretending. That was the morning I chose silence. Not because I was afraid, but because silence lets people reveal themselves. My name is Jessica. I'm 34. And for 7 years, I played the role of the grateful wife. I smiled at insults disguised as jokes. I thanked a woman who never wanted me at her son's table. And I swallowed more than bitter coffee. I swallowed pride, pain, and the slow poison of being dismissed. Until one morning I swapped our coffee cups. And in that moment, everything began to unravel. It was a rainy Sunday, the kind where steam from the coffee curls gently in the kitchen light. We were seated at my mother-in-law's long oak dining table, the same one where I had been told I wasn't real family, more times than I could count. She placed a mug in front of me, smiling sweetly. "Just the way you like it, dear," she said. I smiled back, polite. But my fingers hesitated on the handle, because this time the coffee didn't smell like coffee. It smelled like the end of something I had been too scared to name. And instead of drinking it, I gave it to the man who never believed me. It started with a smile. One of those overly sweet ones that never quite reaches the eyes. "Especially for you, dear," Diane said, her voice lilting like honey. A little too smooth. She placed the mug in front of me with both hands, like it was some sacred offering. Smiled back. "Because that's what I always did. That's what you're supposed to do when your mother-in-law is trying, right?" But the moment my fingers wrapped around the cup, I knew something was off. It was warm, familiar, but the steam rising from it wasn't. Instead of that deep, rich aroma of freshly brewed comfort, I caught a strange metallic tang, like something sour hiding beneath the surface. Something artificial, chemical, wrong. And for a second my mind raced back. Not to anything dramatic. Just a moment from a year ago. After a family dinner, I'd spent the whole night curled on the bathroom floor, clutching my stomach, sweating through my shirt. Diane had been right there with her hand on my back, whispering, "Maybe you just can't handle certain foods, sweetheart." Steve, my husband, had laughed. "Jessica's always been a little dramatic. That's how it always went. But here's the thing. Our bodies remember what our hearts try to forget." And that morning, standing in Diane's kitchen, surrounded by polite silence and tension you could cut with a knife, I realized that cup of coffee was holding more than caffeine. It was holding a question. Do you trust her? And just as I asked myself that, I saw her watching me. Not the way a caring woman watches someone she loves. No, this was sharper, focused, waiting. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't offering me comfort. She was offering me control, her control. Because sometimes, danger doesn't come crashing through the door. It walks in smiling and hands you a warm cup. And this time I wasn't going to drink it. But I knew who would. I wish I could tell you that the strange smell in that coffee was a one-time thing. That it was some accident or harmless oversight. But deep down I knew better. Because this wasn't the first time. Not even close. Our bodies, they have memories. Not like the kind we post in photo albums or bring up at family dinners. No, these memories live in the shadows. They wait in your muscles, your gut, your skin. And mine had been trying to warn me for years. There was the time 2 Christmases ago, when Diane insisted I try her famous cranberry cider. 10 minutes after dinner, I felt lightheaded. My hands trembled so badly I dropped the dessert plate. Steve had just chuckled and said, "Maybe you should eat more next time." Or the afternoon tea at her garden party last spring. Everyone else seemed fine. But me. I spent the rest of the day in bed, my vision blurring, my heart racing for no reason I could explain. Again Diane had been there, touching my wrist, looking concerned. "Maybe you're just sensitive, Jessica." At some point I stopped keeping track. Because every time I spoke up, I was met with a shrug or a smirk. It's probably just stress. You overthink everything. You should really see someone about your anxiety. And maybe I started to believe it, because when you hear the same narrative enough times, you stop trusting your own story. You start filing away your instincts like unreliable witnesses. But your body, it never forgets. It whispers when your heart is too tired to scream. It tightens your stomach, clutches your chest, spins your world just enough to make you pause. And that morning with that cup of coffee, my body was done whispering. It was shouting. Because when the same person keeps handing you the same sickness wrapped in a smile, you stop asking, "What if?" and start asking, "What now?" And I knew exactly what I was going to do. They say survival is instinct, but sometimes it's choreography. It's the quiet kind, learned not in battle, but in kitchens, in long silences at dinner tables, in glances that say more than words ever could. And after years in Diane's house, I had learned how to move quietly, how to nod at comments that stung, how to serve myself last, how to smile even when I felt myself shrinking inside. So when I switched the mugs that morning, I did it like I had done everything else in that house, carefully, invisibly, perfectly. Steve was scrolling through his phone like always, one hand resting lazily on the back of his chair, too disinterested to notice anything outside his glowing screen. Diane was watching me. I could feel her eyes on me the way you feel the sun through a window, warm but heavy, waiting. So I leaned forward, pretended to check a message, and with one smooth motion, I pushed my mug slightly to the side and wrapped my fingers around his. No clinking, no drama, just a quiet swap, mine for his. The cup that had always been black, no sugar, just like he liked it. And then, took a sip, slowly, only, like nothing had happened. Across from me, Steve finally lifted the mug Diane had made for me. Her special blend. He didn't hesitate, didn't look up. He took a long sip, let out a little sigh, and went right back to scrolling. But Diane, her smile flickered, just for a second, a twitch in her jaw, tiny flash of something that looked a lot like fear. That's when I knew. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't stress. It wasn't all in my head. Had always been in the cup. And this time, for the first time, he was the one drinking it. First, nothing happened. Steve let out a little sigh, rubbing his temple with the back of his hand like he always did when scrolling through emails. Diane reached for a napkin. I stirred the spoon in my cup out of habit, though there was nothing left to stir. It was still. But then, his forehead creased. Early. He blinked. Then again, slower. His hand moved to his brow, and just like that, the first crack appeared in the golden boy. I don't know, I feel off, he mumbled. Diane's hand froze midair. The napkin crumpled in her grip. She glanced at him, then at me, then back again. And I just sat there, sipping the coffee meant for him. The one he always made fun of, too weak, too sweet, too much creamer. Funny how that same cup now tasted like peace. Steve rubbed his temples again. His jaw tightened. He squinted toward the window as if the light suddenly hurt. Sweat started to gather just beneath his hairline. Still he said nothing, because Steve was raised to be strong. And strong men don't admit when their knees go weak. But his body was already speaking. Then, her facade was slipping. Her fingers clenched the edge of the tablecloth like it could somehow anchor her to the moment before this one. The moment when everything still felt controlled. She stood up too quickly. "Maybe you should lie down, sweetheart," she said. Her voice, too high, too fast. As if she already knew what was happening. As if she had prepared for this moment, but never imagined it'd land on him. That's when it hit me. She had never cared about what was happening. Only who it was happening to. Because when you love someone, you panic for their safety. But when you're guilty, you panic for your own. And I watched it all. Her fear, his confusion, and the truth unraveling one heartbeat at a time. I watched him shift in his seat, one hand bracing the table, the other pressed to his forehead. His breathing had changed. Shallow. Uneven. He was sweating now. Skin pale. Muscles stiff. And still he said nothing. That's when I knew. He was afraid. But not just of what was happening in his body. He was afraid to name it. To face it. Oh, I did it for him. Steve, I said softly, as if I were asking about the weather. You just drank the same coffee your mother made for me. Silence. Diane froze. Steve blinked. The air in the room went still, thick like fog before a storm. His lips parted, but no words came out. He looked at the mug, then at me, then at Diane. I could see the moment the thought took root. That sharp flicker in his eyes. What if she's right? Diane stood behind him now, hand reaching for his shoulder. She stammered. He's probably just tired. He skipped breakfast, that's all. But I didn't let her finish. Strange, I said, leaning back in my chair, still holding his coffee. I've had 3 sips of your drink, and I feel fine. So why don't you? Her face went cold. He turned to her, really looking this time, not through her but at her. The gears turning in his mind. All the past moments suddenly resurfacing. The late-night vomiting. The dizzy spells. The brushed-off symptoms. The smirk Diane always gave me when Steve wasn't looking. That's what speaking the truth does. It rearranges the room. It pulls down the curtains, opens the windows, and forces everyone to see what they've been pretending not to. And Steve. For the first time, he didn't laugh. He didn't call me dramatic. He didn't say I was imagining things. Because his body wouldn't let him lie anymore. Before we continue, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had a moment, just one, where you finally said the thing you were never supposed to say? Maybe it was at the dinner table, maybe behind closed doors. Maybe it was just a whisper to yourself in the mirror. If this story is bringing something up for you, a memory, a feeling, a truth you once swallowed, I'd love for you to share it in the comments below. Tell me, have you ever been in Jessica's shoes? Because sometimes just writing it down is the first step to healing. Diane had always been composed. Lipstick perfect, blouse crisp, voice soft and sweet, just sharp enough to cut when no one else was listening. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't have to. She ruled with subtle glances, with little comments masked as kindness. She controlled the room the way a puppeteer pulls strings, delicately, expertly, and always from the shadows. But that morning, her strings began to fray. Steve was swaying now, gripping the edge of the table with white knuckles. Beads of sweat ran down his temple, his breathing quick and shallow. And Diane, he panicked. I'll get a cold cloth, she said too quickly, already stepping away, already trying to fix what was unraveling. But I didn't move. Steve, I said steady and low, I think we need to call a doctor. He shook his head, stubborn as ever. It's nothing. I just need a minute. Diane snapped back into the room. No need for that, she said too sharply. Her hand reached for my phone as if to stop me from dialing. And that's when I saw it. Not fear for her son. Fear of being found out. She wasn't worried about Steve being sick. She was terrified that someone else might find out he was. I looked her in the eyes, and for the first time in 7 years, she looked away. Why not? I asked gently, almost like I was offering her a way out. Her mouth opened, then closed. She didn't have an answer. And that silence, that was everything. Because a woman like Diane always has something to say. Theory. Story. A twist of words to make you doubt what you just saw. But in that moment, she had nothing. Control doesn't break with a scream. It snaps in the silence, when truth hangs in the air heavier than any excuse. Steve staggered to the side, knocking his chair back. His body slumped against the counter, weak, confused, scared. But he wasn't the only one falling. Diane, so used to orchestrating everything, stood frozen in place. She wasn't the conductor anymore. She was just another person in the room. One who had something to hide. The hospital smelled like bleach and something metallic. a smell I had grown familiar with over the years. Too familiar. I sat quietly in the corner of the emergency room, watching as Steve lay pale and shaky on the bed. His shirt was damp, his skin clammy, and the bravado he usually wore like armor was nowhere to be seen. Monitors beeped softly, punctuating the silence. A nurse drew blood. Another took vitals. Steve winced as the needle slipped in. But he didn't complain. He didn't say much at all. And maybe that was the loudest part. I watched the doctor's work, efficient, focused, calm in the chaos. And I wondered how many other women had sat in this exact chair, holding back years of what-ifs, waiting for someone, anyone, to confirm what their hearts already knew. The doctor came in, holding a clipboard and a face I couldn't read. He looked at Steve, then at me. "Mr. Bennett," he said, "your test results show elevated levels of a compound we typically see in prescription sedatives. If the dose had been any higher, we'd be having a very different conversation." Steve's fingers clenched the hospital sheets. His lips parted slightly, as if to say something, but he didn't. The doctor turned to me. "You mentioned the coffee was made by his mother." He nodded. "She made it for me. But he drank it by mistake." The doctor didn't flinch. He just nodded again. "We'll need to report this. These things, they don't go unnoticed." And in that moment it hit me. For years I had lived through symptoms no one believed. Now they were written down in ink. Logged. Documented. Real. No more guessing. No more gaslighting. Just truth. In black and white. Steve turned his head slowly toward me. His eyes were glassy, tired. And for the first time in a long time, full of something that looked a lot like guilt. But I didn't say anything. I just leaned back. Because I didn't need to explain anymore. The blood work had spoken. Sometimes, healing doesn't come from apologies. It comes from finally being seen, by someone with no reason to doubt you. We sat there in silence. Steve in the hospital bed, wires tracing his heartbeat. Me in the corner chair, legs crossed, hands folded in my lap. There was so much to say. But I wasn't in a rush to say it. 'Cause for once, I wasn't the one who owed the explanation. Steve shifted, wincing slightly, his fingers curling tighter around the edge of the sheet. "I didn't know," he said quietly, like it might carry more weight if it was whispered. I turned my head slowly toward him. Didn't raise my voice. Didn't cry. "Didn't you?" "Yes." He looked at me then, not just with guilt but with something deeper. Recognition. Because the truth is, he had known. Maybe not in full. Maybe not clearly. But in the way we all know things we don't want to admit. In the way you look the other way because facing it would mean changing everything. Kept my voice steady. "How long have you known something wasn't right?" He didn't answer. "Was it when I fainted at your mother's birthday brunch?" Pause. "When I ended up in urgent care with dehydration and a heart rate that scared even the nurse?" Still silence. I leaned forward slightly. "Or was it when you told me, and I quote, 'Stop being so sensitive. My mom loves you, she just doesn't show it the way you want her to'?" Steve shut his eyes. Hard. Like the truth stung worse now that someone else was holding it up in front of him. He rubbed his temples, the same way he always did when I cried at night. When I said I didn't feel safe. When I begged him to believe me. He didn't need to say the words, because I already knew. He had chosen comfort over truth. Chosen peace with his mother over protection for his wife. And that silence, that slow, passive silence, that was betrayal too. Because you don't need to raise your voice to be complicit. Sometimes all you have to do is stay quiet. The door creaked open, and in walked Detective Harper. Mid-40s, sharp-eyed, clipboard in one hand, calm professionalism in the other. She didn't raise her voice or rush her words. She didn't need to. "Mr. Bennett," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. "I understand your mother prepared the drink that led to this reaction. Is that correct?" Steve looked at her, then at me. And I could see it happening. The storm of two loyalties crashing into one impossible choice. He opened his mouth, then closed it, then looked back at the detective. "Yes," he finally muttered. "She made it. For my wife. I drank it by mistake." Harper nodded, jotting something down without judgment. She continued, "Has this happened before? Any previous unexplained illnesses?" Another silence, longer this time. He looked down at the blanket covering his lap. I saw his hands tremble. I didn't say a word. This wasn't mine to answer anymore. Because for years I had been the one trying to prove something, to speak up, to beg him to see it. But now it was his turn to carry the weight of knowing. "I don't know," he whispered. But the look in his eyes told a different story. This is what accountability looks like. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's just sitting in a quiet room, realizing you can't keep pretending you didn't see what you saw. The detective paused for a moment, then gently asked, "Do you want to press charges?" Steve looked at me. For a second I saw the boy inside the man. The one raised by a woman who baked cookies and packed lunches, but also controlled every decision with guilt and manipulation. He searched my face for an answer, but I had none to give him, because this time, this wasn't my decision. I folded my hands in my lap and said softly, "That's your mother, Steve. And that's your choice. Because healing isn't about watching someone else do what's right. It's about knowing when it's not your job to carry their guilt anymore." Thank you for walking through this story with me. If it stirred something in you, if you've ever had to step away from someone who said they loved you but never acted like it, you're not alone. I'd love to hear your thoughts below. Have you ever had to choose yourself over someone you once trusted? If this story meant something to you, please share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us we're stronger than we think. 'Cause sometimes, it only takes one story to remember who you really are. The room goes eerily quiet. The clinking of silverware stops. The hum of distant voices fades into the background. It's just the three of them now, the calm before the storm. Diane's sweet smile falters. Just a twitch, but it's enough to expose the mask. Steve's hand, still clutching the coffee mug, pauses mid-sip. His fingers tighten around the porcelain, but his eyes stay locked on Jessica. He doesn't know what's coming, not yet. And then, with a calmness that surprises even her, Jessica speaks. Her voice is steady, not a trace of hesitation. "You drank the coffee your mother made for me." The words fall like a hammer onto fragile glass. Diane's eyes widen, her lips parting in an attempt to interrupt, but Jessica's gaze is unshakable. Diane freezes, her mouth still open, but no words come out. Steve's grip on the mug tightens, his knuckles turning white as the words settle in. It's like a switch flips, and Jessica can see the flicker of confusion cross his face. Jessica sits back, still as a statue, but inside, a whirlwind rages. Years of self-doubt, every moment of gaslighting, every time she had been told she was too sensitive, floods her mind. All the time she swallowed her discomfort for the sake of family, for the sake of peace. The quiet moments when she had looked for signs of support, only to be met with dismissal. Her inner voice rises, louder now than it's ever been. "How many times, Jessica? How many times did you let them make you feel crazy? How many times did you swallow your instincts, telling yourself it was just stress, just anxiety? No, this is not your fault. This moment right here, this is the truth you've been fighting for." Jessica doesn't blink. She doesn't flinch. She lets it all out in one smooth breath, as if the weight of all those years of doubt is finally lifted. "Do you realize what you've done? How many times I've tried to explain, to tell you that something wasn't right? And every time you brushed me off. Every time you chose her comfort over mine. Over the truth. Well, now you know, Steve. Now you feel it." For a split second, the room holds its breath. Diane's mouth still hangs open, but now there's fear behind her eyes, not the warmth she usually pretends to have. Steve's face slowly crumbles, like the walls he built to protect himself are being torn down, one brick at a time. His eyes widen, and for the first time he doesn't laugh it off. He doesn't call her dramatic. He doesn't say anything at all, but Jessica knows. It's not because he can't speak. It's because he feels it. He feels the truth. The same truth she's been carrying alone for years. And for the first time she's believed. Not because she's convincing, but because Steve feels it too. The tension in the room becomes almost unbearable as Jessica calmly reaches for her phone. Her fingers hover over the screen, ready to dial 911, to take control of the situation. The truth is out in the open, and Jessica knows it's time to act. It's no longer just about the coffee. It's about everything that Diane has done, everything she's hidden behind her charming facade. But before Jessica can make the call, Diane moves. Her hand shoots out, grabbing Jessica's wrist with a force that surprises her. Diane's grip is tight, her fingers trembling with panic. She pulls Jessica back, her eyes wide with something that isn't concern but desperation. "Don't," Diane hisses, her voice shaking. "Don't call anyone. This isn't what you think." Jessica freezes, her heart pounding. For a moment, the room seems to stretch, the air thick with the weight of Diane's panic. The woman who had always controlled the room with subtle glances and carefully placed words is no longer the calm matriarch. She's a woman desperate to cover her tracks, terrified of what will happen when the truth fully unravels. Jessica looks at Diane, her grip still held firmly, but now she sees her for what she truly is. Not the loving mother-in-law, not the woman who's always been above reproach. No, she sees Diane as she really is. A manipulator, a puppeteer who's been pulling strings from the shadows for too long. In that moment, Jessica realizes how much power Diane has had over her life, over Steve's life, over everything. But now Diane's grip is slipping. Jessica takes a breath, calm and steady, but her voice cuts through the tension like a knife. "Let go of me, Diane." For the first time, Diane hesitates. Her eyes flicker, unsure whether to push harder or to retreat. But Jessica is done being controlled. The years of manipulation, the whispers in the dark, the way Diane had always positioned herself as the caring matriarch. Jessica sees it all clearly now. The grip on her wrist loosens, and Diane steps back, the mask of control slipping away. Steve, who has been silent up until now, finally seems to understand. His eyes, once glazed over with denial, now focus on the scene unfolding before him. It's like a fog has lifted, and he can finally see what's been happening right in front of him for so long. The guilt hits him hard. The realization that he's not just betrayed Jessica, but he's also betrayed himself. For all these years, he chose to turn a blind eye to Diane's actions. He convinced himself that everything was fine, that Jessica was being too sensitive. But now, with the weight of the truth in the room, he understands the cost of his silence. This is where the difference between love and control becomes painfully clear. Love isn't about dominating someone's life with manipulation. It's about allowing them to be themselves, to speak their truth, and to stand together in the light. Diane's love had always been conditional, tied to her need for power and control. She didn't love Steve or Jessica. She loved control. And Steve. For so long he had been blind to it. He had believed in his mother's version of love, thinking that maintaining peace meant ignoring the cracks in their relationship. But now he's seeing the betrayal for what it is. Jessica, too, has learned the hard way. The loyalty she thought she had in Steve was never loyalty. It was submission, a quiet blindness to the truth. But now she knows the difference. And for the first time, she feels the strength to make her own decisions, to break free from the hold Diane has had on her. The room is silent now. Diane stands at the edge of it all, her hands clenched by her sides, unable to hide her fear. Steve looks at Jessica, his face filled with regret and shame. But Jessica doesn't need his apologies anymore. She doesn't need anything from him except the truth. It's no longer about Diane. It's no longer about Steve. It's about Jessica. And for the first time in years, she's no longer afraid to speak the truth. No longer afraid of the consequences. The sterile smell of the hospital is familiar now. hauntingly so. Jessica walks through the fluorescent-lit hallways, her footsteps quiet but heavy, echoing in the vast silence around her. The tension from the earlier confrontation still clings to the air, but there's something new now. The truth has been spoken, and all that's left is the confirmation of what she already knows. Steve, pale and unsteady, walks beside her, his hand gripping the side of the hallway for support. His silence is deafening, but in it, Jessica can sense his turmoil. The weight of everything that has just happened is crashing down on him. His body betrays him in ways he can no longer ignore. He's not just sick. He's realizing with each step how deeply he's been deceived by the woman he thought he could trust the most. They're led into a small exam room, where the doctor is already waiting, clipboard in hand, looking calm and efficient. His presence is clinical, but there's an understanding behind his eyes that says he's seen this before. The doctor doesn't waste time with pleasantries. He goes straight to the point. "Mr. Bennett," the doctor says, his voice steady but with a hint of concern. "The results are back. We've found elevated levels of a compound typically found in prescription sedatives." He looks over at Jessica, then back at Steve. "If the dosage had been any higher, we'd be having a very different conversation right now." Jessica listens, her heart still and calm. She's been waiting for this moment for years. The moment when her suspicions would be validated, when her body's protests would be confirmed. But it doesn't bring joy. It doesn't bring relief. Instead, it brings something far more complex. The certainty that she wasn't crazy, that she wasn't imagining things, that she was right all along. The doctor's words settle in the room like a weight. The validation is a double-edged sword. Jessica never wanted to be right about this. She never wanted to live through the fear, the doubt, the illness. But now, it's all there, written in black and white. And the quiet voice inside her that had screamed for years now has the answer. Steve's face drains of color as he processes the doctor's words. His gaze flickers from the doctor to Jessica, and then back again, as though he's still trying to piece together what has just been revealed. His fingers twitch nervously at his side, the reality sinking in with painful clarity. His body is shaking, not just from the physical symptoms, but from the emotional reckoning that is taking place inside him. He finally looks at Jessica, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt, shame, and confusion. I never knew it was this bad," he whispers, his voice hoarse. I never thought she would do something like this. How could I not see it?" Jessica doesn't answer right away. She's been waiting for this moment, but now that it's here, it's almost too much to process. She takes a deep breath and steadies herself. The anger, the hurt, the frustration, it all feels distant now, as if it no longer belongs to her. She's already moved past the need to explain, to convince anyone of the truth. It's been confirmed by the doctor. The truth is out in the open. The doctor looks between them both, his tone professional but not unkind. "This isn't something that happens overnight," he says. "It's been happening for a while. You've been dealing with symptoms for some time, but now that we know what's going on, the most important thing is moving forward. And that means facing the truth." The truth. Jessica's mind lingers on that word. The doctor might be referring to the sedatives in Steve's system, but for her, the truth is much larger. The truth is the years of being silenced, the years of doubting herself, the years of being dismissed by the very people who were supposed to protect her. Jessica looks at Steve, his face still pale, still processing everything. She knows that his journey has just begun. He's facing more than just physical illness now. He's facing the truth about himself, about his blind loyalty to Diane, about the way he has allowed his mother's control to shape their lives. In this moment, Jessica realizes that justice isn't always about legal battles or courtroom drama. Sometimes, justice comes quietly, in the form of a doctor's words, in the form of a piece of paper with test results that confirm what you've known all along. It doesn't come with fireworks or fanfare. It doesn't come with applause. It comes in the small moments when the truth is finally seen, when it is finally heard, and when the world is forced to acknowledge what has been hidden in the shadows for far too long. Jessica takes another steady breath. She doesn't need to say anything more. The truth has spoken for her. And for the first time, she feels the weight of it lifting off her shoulders. Now it's time for Steve to face it. Jessica stands still, her gaze steady on Steve. The room is heavy with silence, but Jessica's words will break it. Steve, still processing everything, looks at the floor. His hands are clenched, his chest tight with guilt. "Steve," Jessica begins, her voice calm but unwavering. "You always knew, didn't you?" Steve looks up, his eyes filled with shock. His lips part but no words come out. He wants to deny it, but he can't. Jessica doesn't need an answer from him. "Every time I told you I was sick, every time I felt dizzy or nauseous, you dismissed it. You called it stress. Or told me I was imagining things. Did you ever really listen to me, Steve?" Steve's gaze drops again, but Jessica doesn't look away. "You ignored me because you didn't want to face the truth. You didn't want to believe your mother could do this. You chose to believe her over me." The words are out now, and Steve's body tenses. His face flushes with guilt, and Jessica knows he can't deny it anymore. "I tried to talk to you," she continues, her voice steady. "But you chose silence. And silence, it's complicity. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come from active harm. It comes from doing nothing when your partner needs you the most." Steve finally looks up, tears welling in his eyes. "I didn't know how bad it was," he whispers. "I didn't want to believe it." Jessica's voice softens but still carries the weight of years of hurt. "You didn't want to face it because facing it meant accepting that your mother was poisoning your wife. You let her control us both." For a moment, they both sit in silence. Steve's regret fills the room, but Jessica doesn't need him to say more. This is not about him seeking forgiveness. This is about her speaking the truth. "You're not a villain, Steve," Jessica says quietly. "But you let one exist. And that's almost worse." Steve doesn't respond, the weight of her words settling over him. He's not the villain, but he allowed the villain to remain in their lives unchecked. The room falls silent. The detective's calm voice cuts through the tension. "Mr. Bennett, your mother prepared the coffee that caused the symptoms, is that correct?" Steve's eyes flicker to Jessica, then quickly drop to the floor. He struggles to speak, his voice breaking. "Yes, she made it. I drank it by mistake." Jessica doesn't respond, just watches. She's no longer invested in the fight. It is done. This is his moment, his decision. Steve's eyes meet hers briefly, filled with regret. His voice cracks. "I saw the signs, but I didn't want to believe it." The detective, not pushing, lets the silence linger. "Has this happened before?" she asks. Steve's hands tremble, his face pale. "Yes, I ignored it." Jessica feels a weight lift inside her. For once, she doesn't need him to choose her. She doesn't need him to apologize. She just needed the truth. And now it's out. For the first time, she realizes, it's not about saving a marriage. It's about saving myself. She doesn't speak again. She's free. As Jessica steps out of the hospital, her phone buzzes in her pocket. She pauses, pulling it out. Her eyes scan the message, and for the first time in what feels like forever, she feels a sense of finality wash over her. Divorce papers are ready. The weight of the words feels strange, almost surreal, but there's no turning back now. Diane will face an investigation for her actions, but Steve, he's left to deal with the wreckage he's caused. He'll have to reckon with the truth, with the choices he made, and the betrayal he allowed to fester. Jessica walks with a sense of purpose. No more fighting. No more explaining herself. It is done. In the quiet of the hospital, she reflects, her voice soft and measured. "Maybe she poisoned my coffee. But you poisoned my trust." The camera lingers on Jessica sitting at her kitchen table in her apartment, the soft light of the sunrise casting a golden glow over the room. She takes a sip from a fresh cup of coffee, clean and untainted. Her face, calm and peaceful, looks out the window at the new day unfolding. It's a quiet moment of reclamation, of peace, of moving forward. The sunrise behind her symbolizes a new beginning. When someone stops you from being heard long enough, you learn to speak through action. Sometimes, silence becomes the loudest response. It's not about waiting for apologies. It's about choosing yourself. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to Jessica's story. I hope it left you thinking about the importance of standing up for yourself, even when it feels like no one else will. The lesson here is clear. Trust your instincts, know your worth, and never let anyone control your truth. Sometimes you need to take the power back into your own hands and choose yourself. What did you think of Jessica's journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Have you ever had to choose yourself over someone else's expectations? Share your story with us. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of our strength and resilience. Until next time, take care of yourself and remember, you always have the power to change your own story.